Shalom, all praise to Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, double line to the Apostle GMS. This is Another Allah coming at you another video. And in this video, I just want to go into Hebrews chapter 5 verse 14, just going into a little bit into discernment, the topic of discernment and what discernment means and what discernment is. So let's get right to it. I'll start from verse 12. For Hebrews 5 and 12. For the time we ought to be teachers, ye have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of the Most High. So when it's time for you to be a teacher, you have needed one teach you again. And if you need one teach you again, then you lack understanding. That's why in the previous verse he says, verse 11, Hebrews 5:11, on whom we have many things to say, and hard to be uttered, seeing ye are dull of hearing. So he's saying that they were dull of hearing, they weren't sharp. How? Why? Because for the time you ought to be teachers, you have need that one teach you again, which be the first principle of the oracles of the Most High, and I'll become such as have need of milk and not of strong meat. So they were people that have need of milk, not of strong meat. What's the difference? For everyone that useth milk is unskillful in the word of righteousness, for he is a babe. So a person that's a babe is the person that's unskillful in the word of righteousness. Okay? Like how a babe sucks in their mother's breast for milk. Right? So that's what that's talking about. A person that's a babe, that's a babe, or milk is a representation of being unskillful in the word of righteousness. You're a newcomer. There's a term for that called neophyte. Let's look at that. Neophyte, a person who is new to a subject, skill, or belief. And right here, similar says a new convert to a religion, a novice in a religious order. See, Latin from neophytos, literally newly planted. And even gives you a scripture. But first used in the sense new convert by St. Paul, 1 Timothy 3 and 6, from neos, new, like Neo from the Matrix, neos, new, and futon, plant. So neophyte is a person who is new to a subject, skill, or belief. Neophyte comes from the word neophytos, which means newly planted. That's a person that's new, like a new convert, right? They're unskillful. They're a novice. They're like a rookie, so to speak. Continuing on. But strong meat belongeth to them that are of full age. So strong meat deserves to someone belongeth to them that are of full age. In other words, someone that's more mature, someone that's more experienced in this thing. That's the person that strong meat belongeth unto them. Because when you're older, and guess what happens as you get older, you start to develop teeth. You're no longer drinking milk. You're now eating solid food because you grew in maturity. So it says strong meat belonging to them that are of full age. So a person that's of full age or experience, then they can what? They have strong meat. Whereas someone who uses milk, they're unskillful in the word of righteousness. They're a rookie. They may understand just the basics, but they can't understand the deeper sayings, the darker sayings of the scriptures. In other words, the things that are hard to understand, which is what? Strong meat. All right? Those are the deeper understandings of the scriptures. That's why Paul said further up, but spoke about them being dull of hearing. Because what? He said they have need of milk, not strong meat. Because they was unskillful in the word of righteousness. So they couldn't get deeper understanding of the scriptures because they were like novices. But they weren't as experienced. But strong meat belongeth to them that are of full age, even those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. Now what does that mean? What does that word senses mean?
Strong's G 145. Aestheterion.
Aestheterion. Faculty of the mind for perceiving, understanding, judging. So when it says they have their senses exercised, what it means is that their faculty of mind, reasoning, judging, has been exercised. And if something is exercised, it's done what? Repetitiously. One set, 10 reps of whatever that is. 2 sets of 10 reps. So when something is an exercise, it's done repetitiously.
Strong's G 1128. Gumnadzo.
Gumnadzo. It doesn't really give you much. It gives you literal exercise like nakedness, which in ancient Greece they were naked in the gyms, to exercise vigorously in any way, either the body or the mind. Okay? So, let's go back. But strong meat belongeth to them that are of full age, even those who by reason of use. For those who by reason of use, meaning what? Use of their exercise. Continual use. Use of their senses. Like an exercise. Continual use.
Strong's G 1838. Hexus.
Let's see what it says. It doesn't really give, okay? It's a habit, whether of body or mind, a power acquired by custom, practice, use. See? Something that's acquired by custom, by practice, or by use. A habit, whether of body or mind. So, by use of their senses, we went to the word senses. It means faculty of mind, right? Go to it one more time. It meant faculty of mind for perceiving, understanding, judging. And we went to use, it meant like a habit or practice. So it says, even for those who by reason of use, or for those who by meaning of practice, or those who are by reason of practice, or those who by reason of habit have their senses or their faculty of mind for perceiving, understanding, and judging exercised, is done continuously like an exercise, repetitiously, to discern both good and evil. When you got the word discern.
Strong's G 1253. Diacrisis.
Diacrisis. A distinguishing, discerning, judging. So when you have the ability to discern, you have ability to distinguish. Look at the word distinguishing or distinguish. To distinguish means to recognize differences, tell things apart, or be a unique characteristic. So if you have discernment, you can recognize differences. You can tell things apart. So you can look at the righteous and the unrighteous. You can look at what's right and you can look at what's wrong. Look at the word discern. To discern means to perceive, recognize, and this is all from AI Overview. To discern means to perceive, recognize, or distinguish something clearly, often with the senses or intellect, identifying subtle differences or what isn't immediately obvious. See that? See? Read a little more. It says, like like discerning a faint sound in a quiet room. You heard that noise? See? Like that. Like discerning a faint sound in a quiet room, or recognizing right from wrong through judgment. Did I say that? And I didn't look this up until just now, by the way. As a spirit, it involves careful observation, thought, or intuition to understand deeper meanings, patterns, or the true nature of things, separating truth from falsehood or quality from junk. So yeah, it's a good definition. So discern means to perceive, recognize, or distinguish something clearly. So you're looking at patterns. You're looking at different things. And what's that word? I'm typing. Look at the word judging. Judging is a process of forming an opinion, evaluation, or conclusion about someone or something, involving careful thought, reasoning, and assessment. So let's go back. Read this again with the definitions. But strong meat, deep understanding of the scriptures, belong to them that are full age, more mature or experience. Even those who by reason of use, or even those who by reason of habit, even those who by reason of practice, have their senses, meaning their faculty of mind, for perceiving, understanding, and judging, exercised repetitiously over and over and over again, to discern or to distinguish, to tell things apart, to discern, to recognize patterns, sudden changes, and it was another good definition the game gave there. Subtle changes and identifying subtle differences or what isn't immediately obvious. Okay? That is what it means to understand the or the true nature of things. So that's what it means to have discernment. That's what it means to be a strong meat and to have discernment. To understand the deeper breakdowns of the scriptures. Strong meat which is deep understanding, belonging to them that are of full age, more mature, even those who by reason or who by habit or practice of use, who by reason, but strong meat, deeper understanding than the scriptures, belong to them that are full age, meaning more mature experience, even those who by reason of use, meaning reason of habit, reason of practice, being done continually over and over and over again, have their senses, meaning their faculty of mind, for perceiving and understanding and judging, exercise done repetitiously to discern or to distinguish, to discern, to tell things apart, to understand the true nature of things, subtle things, to understand things that's not easily recognized. That way they can discern both good and evil. So you could tell things apart, what's good and what's evil. You can recognize what's good and what's evil. You can understand the true nature of a thing just by having judgment or discernment, spiritual discernment. You can understand the true nature of a thing that's not set forth before you plain. Now, what's more scriptures I wanted to get to? I'm gonna have to close right there. I know I said the same thing multiple times, but that's how I teach sometimes. To get it to brother's head so you can understand it. I like to break things down to the simplest compound. I might have to do a part two to this. In fact, let me see. I'm gonna keep going. This is Sirach 37:14. For a man's mind is sometimes wont to tell him more than 7 watchmen that sit above in a high tower. So sometimes your own mind, sometimes your own judgment can tell you more than 7 watchmen, even if they're wise, that sit above in a high tower. So sometimes your own mind can can tell you more than others than 7 other watchmen. Okay, so there's times when you can come to a conclusion using your own spiritual discernment, even more than having a counsel with other people who may be wise. Okay, that doesn't mean that they're wrong. That don't mean that they aren't wise, but sometimes your own mind can has a certain level of spiritual discernment where you can come to a conclusion, a right conclusion, without seeking the counsel of others. That doesn't mean you shouldn't seek counsel, but based upon the circumstance, in your experience, your spiritual discernment, you can come to certain conclusions and certain judgments that sit above in the high tower. And above all this, pray to the Most High that He will direct thy way in truth. But above all this, above all of that, above your spiritual discernment, telling you more than 7 watchmen, 7 wise of the men that sit above in the high tower. Above all that, pray to the Most High, Yahweh Shemi Shah, that He will direct thy way in truth. So even if your spiritual discernment allows you to come to a conclusion, in the end, still pray to Yahweh Shemi Shah that you will be guided in righteousness with the decision that you make. See? See that? Verse 16. Let reason go before every enterprise, reason or judgment. Okay? Careful thought before every enterprise, before every action that you may take. In other words, what it's telling you is don't be rash. Don't be too quick. Don't be too impulsive. You got to think carefully. You got to ponder upon something. Depending upon the situation, the judgment may not always be something that happens right then and there. You might have to think about it for a while. When I say judgment, it don't mean like correcting somebody. It just means judging any situation, whether you should do this or whether you should do that in your own regular personal life. You know what I mean? whatever that may be. Let's say a situation like you know what I think. Let's say you want to put somebody on that you cool with a job, but you know that person's mentality, you know that person's temperament. Well, guess what? You got to think twice. You don't say, "Hey, I know that guy. We cool. Just hire him." But you know that person isn't somebody that's really, the best person at a job site. You know this person is lazy. You know they don't come to work a lot. And you know if you hire that, if you put that person on and that person get hired, what if that person turns out to be a bad worker? You know what I'm saying? What if they turn out to be a bad worker? And I don't mean that person, if they got an issue with somebody, I don't mean they're the problem. But what if that person just a flat out all around bad worker? Well, you got to think. Nah, I can't. That wouldn't be wise. You know what I'm saying? That wouldn't be wise. You got to think about a situation and see what's the best decision to make. Should I do that? I don't know. You want to tell this person something, but you know that that person talks to somebody else that you don't really like too much. So reason upon a situation, you know what? I'm not gonna tell that person because that person talks to this person over here that I don't like. And if I tell this person my business or whatever I'm about to tell them, then that's gonna get back to that person because more than likely that person is gonna say something. They may not, but that's proper judgment. That's taking careful thought before you make a decision instead of just being rash with your tongue and not thinking, being impulsive. Okay? So you got to think. You got to think upon a situation. But with certain level of experience, having been through different situations, you know, I think this is the best thing to do right now. A brother that's not don't really got that much experience may not be able to do the same. You may have been in the camp a long time, but maybe that brother, but maybe this certain situation that's being brought to you isn't something you got much experience with. I'm gonna bring it to this brother, and you gotta judge according to the scriptures. You know, Ecclesiastes 5:2. Be not rash with your mouth. Don't be too quick or be impulsive, and let not thine heart be hasty or quick to utter anything before the Most High, because our words are weighty, have weight to them. You don't want to utter any old thing to the Most High because what you say, the Most High Yahweh Shema Shai is going to expect you to keep. So you don't want to be too rash with your mouth. Not just not talking about praying to the Most High. That's just in general. But this is a good example. We're talking about the Most High. For the Most High is in heaven and thou upon earth. Let thy words be few. So what does that mean? Let's look at some different. Let's see if we can go to the blue letter and see what that means. Word be few. See the word few says. If it says anything significant there. Ma'at. Littleness, few, a little, fewness, little. It just says few. Just it says almost, just, hardly, little worth. Go back real fast. Ma'at. That was an Egyptian deity. But when it says let thy words be few, it don't literally mean say two words and that's it. Let thy words be few. Because let's go to that word. Let's look at the word rash. See what the word rash means. Bahal. Rash means to disturb, alarm, terrify, hurry, hasten. So to hasten, hurry, make haste, to dismay, terrify. I'm all the way at the bottom. At the top it says to disturb, alarm, terrify, hurry. So we know that the word rash means to hasten or to hurry, right? So if it's saying be not rash with thy mouth and then saying let thy words be few, then it's a contrast. There got to be a contrast or a difference between being rash and the word being few. Because after it says rash, it says let not thy heart be hasty or be quick. Mahar. Hasten is basically the same thing. Bring quickly. So it has to be a contrast between being rash and few or hasty and few. So if we're not to be rash and we're not to be hasty, meaning to hurry or to be quick, but rather our word means to be few, it doesn't mean to speak 2 or 3 words and that's it. Because if being rash and hasty means to be quick or to hurry or do something quickly, then when it says let the words be few, it means to slow down. And by slowing down, meaning what? Slow down and understand the weight of what it is that you're saying to the Most High. Don't be too quick to just say anything impulsively. Let your words be few. In other words, slow down. Don't just talking as if you're just saying a bunch of different things. Rather, let your words be few. Minimal. Not minimal necessarily by the amount of words you're saying, but just not, but rather, Lord, so on and so, Yahweh Shema Shah, slow it down in the aspect of understand the weight of what it is that you're saying to Yahweh Shema Shah. Because remember, the Most High is above us and we're beneath Him. He's superior to us. We're subservient to Him. Yahweh Shema Shah is superior to us and we are subservient to them. So we got to understand the weight of what it is that we're saying. So we're not to be rash or hasty, meaning quick, but rather we are to let our words be few and slow down and understand the weight of what it is that we're saying. And I'm in the head, James 1:9. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. You know? So that's how it is. And this is all this deals with discernment too. I know I kinda like went to another topic, you know. Well, not necessarily, still on the same topic, because this goes back to judgment too. I didn't go to a different topic because it kind of went to. I was kind of almost going to praying to the Most High, but well, actually I was going into that, but that's still in part of the same thing when it comes to discernment, because the whole thing with discernment was when you're deliberating or coming to a decision, you're judging. You don't want to be too impulsive. You know, you want to listen to a matter first. So James 1:19, wherefore my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. So we gotta be swift to hear, willing to hear. We gotta be slow to speak. You don't want to be too impulsive, and you want to be slow to wrath because you want to be temperate, have balance, not easily rattled. Which we aren't perfect. Some of these things are gonna happen, but this is telling us how we should be, so those things won't happen, or to minimize it, or to minimize it occurring, minimize the likelihood of it occurring. So it's a little more I could read, but that's basically the point of that. So with that, I'm going to close and say, oh, praise Yahweh, Shema Shah, double honor to the Apostle GMS. I hope you learn something. Shalom.